We say a very good evening to Mr Gullis, former Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party. Mr Gullis, good evening.
Hey Jeremy, how are you doing, buddy?
Well, I just didn't want to use your first name to start with, Mr Gullis, because I don't know if you've read the story today. A council in London, this is Sutton Council, has been heavily criticised, thank Christ. Can I say Christ? Well, I have done, because they've said that if their staff ask for your Christian name, that could be offensive and cause anxiety. Most of us think this is hypersensitivity taken to ridiculous lengths, but I need to respect you, Mr Gullis, so are you happy to be called Jonathan, or is Mr Gullis what you require?
I'd rather Jonathan, Jeremy, although even Jonathan would be politer than what most people sometimes on X would call me.
Yeah, absolutely. JG to me, JG forever, but what a load, let's start with that, what a load of old crap, isn't it, mate? What's going on?
It's just exhausting, isn't it? Like, I'm just so bored of nonsense like this even being pursued in any of our public sector. The private sector's got some guilty heads for doing this, but it's always in the public sector the woke nonsense prevails. I mean, who on earth is offended or upset by their Christian name being used? I mean, get a grip. Honestly, there are bigger things in the world to worry about. Rachel Reeves is successfully at the moment crashing the economy.
Let's slow down. Let's not even talk about the economy. Let's talk about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 man. Today, whilst talking about AI, I thought he was talking about the A1 North. Dreary Starmer, that apologist for a Prime Minister, was asked twice, I'm not even playing it, so boring, asked twice if she, Rachel Reeves, from Accounts, would be Chancellor for the remaining time that he was Premier. And he didn't answer it. And this is another example, JG. Twice he wouldn't answer it. For 2 hours, the press go, hold on a minute, that's not great. I don't know what he's doing. Probably gone off to see Lord Ali in Covent Garden. The office of the Prime Minister then released a statement saying she will be Chancellor for the rest of the Premiership. So I ask you, as the ex-Deputy Chair of the Tory Party, if she turns out to be as we all believe she is, and he has to get rid of her, now he's going to be called completely incompetent. What is wrong with this man? What is wrong with this government?
Well, allegedly, he's also said to David Lammy that he'll be guaranteed to be Foreign Secretary as well. So we've got David Lammy, who's giving away British territory to the tune of £9 billion. That's 6 years' worth of winter fuel payments. And we've got Rachel from Accounts, who's made inflation go up, debt go up, borrowing go up, government interest rates go up, mortgage rates go up, and then, of course, the pound falling at the same time as well, which means the price of your food shop's going to get more expensive, your interest rates are going to stay higher on your mortgages, and the government's going to have to spend more and more money on servicing debt rather than investing in NHS, rather than investing in schools, or the government's going to come and say, we need to take more tax out of your pocket, more money.
But I thought this was because the poor Labour Party, when they arrived in 10 Downing Street, it's such a mess the Tories had made of it, there was a £22 million black hole. Now, I'm not an expert, but if I arrived, and I'm not, if they said, Jeremy Kyle, you're Prime Minister, and I walked into my office the first day and we owed £22 billion, I don't think I'd be giving my mates in the union another 11. I'd be trying to save 11. But by having given their mates the pay rises, we now run the risk of ruthless cuts to our public services, which is in itself slightly ironic because they're now going to end up, and I said that in 1979, I was old enough to remember, when Callaghan was in and every union wanted 30% and he gave it to 3 or 4, and when he realised he couldn't afford to give it to the other unions, guess what happened, JG? They all went on strike. Rubbish in the streets, rats everywhere, no ambulances, the army came in, because he couldn't afford it. And that is exactly, in my humble opinion, what will happen. Gave it to the junior doctors, gave it to those blimmin' train drivers, and now, genuinely mean that, everybody will want that money and it ain't there. So they can either print it and inflation will go through the roof and we'll all be screwed, or they'll have to raise taxes and we'll all be screwed. And that's the reality, isn't it?
You've hit the nail on the head, Jeremy. In Stoke-on-Trent, for 14 weeks in a row, after the train drivers got their pay rise from 60 grand to 70 grand, we didn't have any train service on the Sundays because guess what? Train drivers said it wasn't worth their time to work on a Sunday. Now Mick Lynch is saying he wants over £300 extra for drivers to come and work in on their off day. We've got Sadiq Khan, who's obviously allowing tube drivers to work
don't be disrespectful. Don't be disrespectful, Sir Sadiq.
Sir Sadiq, I know. So the biggest failure in London's history has managed to make sure that the tubes have got more expensive and drivers will actually work less. And then, as you say, we've got this other situation where we've had all this money for the NHS and no reforms, no understanding of how we're going to actually improve productivity. Labour said, if you want your social care fixed, you have to now wait till 2028 for another review. If you want to get your hospital waiting list from 18 months to 18 weeks, you now need to wait till 2029. They think the British public are daft. They think they can just say, we're really clever, we know what we're doing, just trust us. The British public have said very clearly, just like they said to the Conservatives when I was in power, we don't trust you, we don't like you, and we'll sit patiently, and when the time comes, we'll tell you where to go.
Barry isn't being rude. He says, I'd like to hear Jonathan Gullis just apologise for the shambles this country is in. His party are as complicit as Labour. What do you say to that?
No, absolutely. I've said that we've made mistakes. I'm embarrassed by the fact that net migration got to 900,000 in that last year. I'm embarrassed by the fact that we allowed the tax burden to get to the highest record it had done. I'm embarrassed that we increased corporation tax. I'm embarrassed that we didn't scrap foreign aid. I'm embarrassed that we didn't scrap the licence fee. I'm embarrassed that we didn't go harder when it came to, deregulating and using our Brexit benefits and opportunities there. I was one of those, I think, few Conservative MPs who didn't poke their head above the parapet, who said what they wanted, who said what they thought their constituents wanted to see be delivered, who said the case for conservatism. But the idea that some of the things that are happening now are the fault of the Conservatives for the birds. Rachel Reeves didn't have to scrap the winter fuel payments for £1.5 billion when she's paying £9 billion to the Chagos Islands. We didn't have to introduce a family farm tax when we're already giving the same amount of money that we're going to allegedly save, giving to foreign farmers overseas.
Don't start me on that.
These are political choices being made by the Labour Party, and it's no one else's fault but the Labour Party for the fact that the economy has seen debt go up, interest rates go up, inflation go up, mortgages go up under Rachel Reeves.
So you weren't a fan of the October budget then, JG?
No, it's a Halloween budget that continues to haunt this country. And the fact you've got businesses, let's not forget, as you've said many times, Jeremy, hospices, GP surgeries, pharmacists, all saying that this increase to employers' national insurance is going to screw them. And local councils are screaming because they've, in Stoke-on-Trent, they're not even getting the full cost of the employers' national insurance for those directly employed by the council covered, let alone those who they procure through the private sector to deliver children and adult social care, which already costs 2/3 of Stoke City Council's budget. So imagine what that's going to do to grass cutting, bin collections. It's going to see services cut, streets getting dirty, grass being overgrown on the corners of our streets, and it'll be Labour who once again saunter off, and the Conservatives, I hope, coming back in to tidy up the mess and actually this time stay true to our principles.
Do you think the Conservative Party is being vocal enough under Badenoch right now? I want them to be more vocal. All the noise is coming from reform, JG. That's got to be truthfully, that's got to be said.
No, I think Kemi's been in some ways screwed over by the fact that Labour's just disintegrated so quickly that before she's had time, let's not forget, she had less than 2 months in the role to come in, to sort out Conservative campaign headquarters, to set up these policy commissions, to review where we went wrong and admit where we went wrong, and then come up with policies that are believable, that are deliverable and will deliver change. And restoring trust is going to take a hell of a long time, and there's a real risk that the Conservative Party may not ever recover from this position. We have to take the threat of reform very seriously.
Would you ever join reform?
The public is still angry with us.
Would you ever join reform?
I don't want to have to join another party. I've been a member of the Conservative Party my entire life.
I know you have, but you said, and we've talked about this before, and if you don't answer, it's fine, but you said it might never recover. That's the first time I've heard anybody say that. The truth of the matter is that divine belief, a bit like the people who think that, we'll talk about the NHS in a minute, a bit like the Labour Party believed, I think, before Boris Johnson won, that the North, anything north of Watford Gap, they vote for us because we're the working man and woman's party. What a load of old tripe that turned out to be. I think the Tories are in a very dangerous position. I think the rhetoric, the bounce, everything that you want to say is coming from reform. I'm simply asking you, as somebody who would be to the right of the Tory party, who was appalled by many of the centrist policies, can you see yourself following other people and going to reform?
I'm going to fight for the heart and soul of the Conservative Party, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that Conservative parliamentarians understand that the level of distrust towards the Conservative Party after our record in office is so severe that no matter how bad Labour's doing, people are saying they're just as bad as the Conservatives, and trust in the two-party system is evaporated at this moment in time, and we've got one hell of a job on our hands if we're going to have any chance to rebuild that trust, and we have to take our time, admit where we went wrong, and come up with believable policies and talk to our values. And we may do all of that, and we may still not come out of it the other side. I hope we do, but we need to be serious about the challenge in front of us. And I don't think enough Conservatives have understood at this moment in time that just because Labour's doing badly, and because there's this lazy assumption that reform might implode, I don't think they will. UKIP survived for over 20 years, that somehow that everyone's banking on Nigel having a fallout with Zia or with Richard. I've never seen them look more united than I do now. If we're lazy and complacent and just wait on other people to fail rather than have a plan of action that we ourselves control, then we are doomed to extinction as far as I'm concerned.
Couldn't agree more. Can I ask you, you talk about the Tory party and looking at where they went wrong. One of the most appalling things today, 500,000 people, we discovered today, have laid on hospital trolleys or floors for more than 12 hours in 2024. Ambulance crews in their hundreds stuck at A&E, missing thousands of 999 calls a day. It would be absolutely right and proper to say, and I think I was told earlier, there's been 39 health ministers since the health service was set up. Wes Streeting talks a good fight. Wes Streeting, I mean, I believe privatisation's the only way forward. I believe that the NHS, yes, loses money, but I believe is effectively been on a pedestal for that long, and we need to say it's not effective. We've got an older population, a bigger population. We're giving away private GPs appointments to illegal immigrants in hotels and not looking after 80-year-old women on the floor with broken hips. But my point is, a lot of that went on under a Tory government, my friend. What can you do differently? Because the NHS, people need to take their rose-tinted spectacles off and stop telling me the nurses and the doctors do a great job. Of course they do, but it's not meeting what the people who paid in for it expect from it. That's the problem.
Let me give you a quick summary, Jeremy. Under Blair, we had these PFI contracts, and in Stoke-on-Trent, we've got a hospital that spends £20 million a year servicing the debt. So that's £20 million a year not going to the front line. The Conservatives came in and then created all these NHS trusts. Now, in a city of 250,000 people, Stoke-on-Trent has 4 NHS trusts. That's 4 CEOs, 4 boards of directors, 4 headquarters. That's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds being wasted, again, not going to the front line. And then on top of that, as you say, we didn't do enough. We got caught in a race of who could promise to spend more money on the NHS and not talk about how we can improve delivery. We need GPs working 7 days a week. We need to have GP practices operating longer hours so people don't go to A&E as a method of actually seeing, in their idea, a doctor. We need to make sure that we live healthier lives. So we need to have more action in preventative healthcare, and we most importantly need a social care system that works. And both Labour and Conservatives have to accept that we've both dodged the big question that's before us. 12,000 people in NHS beds right now that can't leave those beds because there's not a social care place for them.
I liked what Martin Gower...
honest conversation.
I like all of that. I like what Martin Gower said earlier, an ex-NHS trust. I put this to you. He said one of the things that I'd do, he said, you know that doctors, GPs are incentivised. This is bloody ridiculous, man. And I'm not a health secretary. Doctors are incentivised for the largest numbers of patients on the list. So if you've got 3,000 people on your list and you used to have 2,000, you get a tick. You get told that that's the right thing to do. Doctors, he said, should be judged and paid on how many people they see on a daily basis. Surely that makes sense. I've told the story in this show before about years ago when my son needed an ambulance and the ambulance came, and these 2 ladies who were fantastic and brilliant were telling me that it's so difficult for them now, for ambulance men and women, right? And I'm going to try and get this absolutely right, that if they arrive on time, right, and the person dies, that's a tick. But if they arrive late because the system's rubbish and they save a life, they've got a blot against their name. Everything to me is round the wrong way, JG. It doesn't make sense.
Well, this is why I'm partly worried about what Labour's done with the targets that they've set, because the problem is they've chosen a few narrow, and I accept headline-grabbing targets to say we'll get these waiting lists down, but that means all the money and all the resources is going to go to those very narrow specific targets rather than look at the wider picture of healthcare in this country overall, which means that Labour will get the headlines potentially. And by the way, they've bet the house on this. So if they don't, I think that will be another blot against their name. But if they don't see waiting lists come down, if they don't see A&E pressures being eased, and if they don't see cancer treatments being sped up, then where is that money gone? And I genuinely fear we're going to end up having another conversation about where on earth has all this money gone. It's gone to ridiculous PFI contracts. It's gone to ridiculous
Quangos.
Procurement rules. And like you say, we've got to this DEI nonsense where people are being paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to push diversity, equity, and inclusivity. We don't need people worrying about the colour of someone's skin. We just need someone to deliver healthcare.
It's really interesting. They said, you just made a really good point. He promised to crush the gangs and bring down immigration. Fact, that hasn't happened. He said, I won't raise taxes. That has happened. He said the public services will improve. We're hearing today of ruthless cuts, and you're right. He says he's going to bring the waiting list down. You're right. They've pinned their colours to the mast on many things that are probably unachievable. Just to sum up, JG, it's very easy. I liked your honesty. I think it's very easy for anybody in opposition, certainly be it Reform, the Tories, anybody to come here and say, this government is doing a bad job. I don't think I've known of such incompetence. In fact, I bought what Lord Ed Vaizey said earlier, that there's nothing proactive about Starmer and his cabinet. It's all reactive. There doesn't seem to be a plan. It's almost as if they're caught in the headlights most days, and that is not in any way. And I want to finish, right, with a text that sums up, and you're the first Tory MP that said this and admitted it. Chris in Newbury. Jezza. In my mind, every single disaster we face today was created by the Tories. No nuclear, Cameron, modern slavery, May, net zero, May, COVID lockdowns, Johnson. Every single problem we had, I can lay at their door, and I would be really incapable right now of being able to forgive them. You've admitted that. I'm not sure enough Tories know the depth of the anger. And I think that anger has been exacerbated because they've suddenly all looked at this shambles, this appalling socialist shambles that's there. And much as they go, do you know what? Keir Starmer's a bloody nightmare. I don't like this. Many people are going, that's the Tories' fault that they're in there. That's the problem you've got, right?
No, totally. Look, in 2019, the Conservative Party won on an anti-Corbyn pro-Brexit ticket. Labour won in 2024 on an anti-Conservative ticket. The Conservative Party has to be clear. We need to bin off net zero. We can be pro-environment, but this net zero madness is going to make us colder, make us poorer, kill manufacturing, steel production, and other important sectors in this country. We need to scrap things like the licence fee that we've promised, that now Labour's even thinking about doing. We need to actually have a serious, credible plan on immigration, both legal and illegal. We need to get back to being the party of law and order, which means building more prisons so we can lock people up for longer and having good quality rehabilitation. We need to actually unleash business by reducing regulations, reducing tax, increasing incentives for apprenticeships, so we can not have this over-reliance on universities and be willing to say some universities may not survive, but guess what? We don't need 120 universities in the United Kingdom. We also then need to say with the NHS, the honest conversation, and the public, I think, are more ready than ever before. If you want the German healthcare model, the French healthcare model, or the Australian healthcare model, all of which Wes Streeting himself said were some of the best in the world, they use insurance schemes, some which are state-owned, but insurance schemes, and that only the poorest in society get free access, and the rest of us pay a little bit for an insurance scheme that means that we get good quality care. And I think it's time to have that frank and honest conversation, because throwing money into the money pit that is the NHS has not improved productivity, has not improved healthcare outcomes, and all we're seeing is more and more people putting burden upon the NHS and not actually resolving the issue itself. Mental health is a major issue in this country. We're not doing enough to intervene early enough. We've got physical health like obesity that costs £6+ billion a year. And I'm saying that as someone who would definitely be on the wrong end of the BMI scale. But people like me need to actually take responsible decisions to eat more fruit, eat more veg, do more exercise, so that when we get older, we don't have healthcare needs that require the NHS to always have to intervene. personal responsibility, family values and the importance of family, and actually having an honest discussion about the fact we have a declining birth rate in this country. That means there'll be fewer younger people paying for a much larger older population in the future in retirement, which will only end up in bankrupting this country. It's time for serious, honest conversations.
Really appreciate your time, mate. Where are you? You've got like a notice board behind you. Did you do an alcoholics, like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting or something? What have you done?
No, I popped into Westminster to tell these Tory MPs to give their heads a wobble and make sure they take the fight to Labour and Reform and realise that they've got a hell of a lot of apologising to do first.
Good man. I really appreciate having you on.